Fear Not, Episode 126. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by Fwilliams. Welcome, Florence. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Are you ready to fear not today?
I think so. I'm a little fearful, but we'll try.
Florence is the author of The Nature Fix: Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, and More Creative, as well as Breasts, A Natural and Unnatural History, which was the winner of the 2013 Los Angeles Times Book Prize. She's a contributing editor at Outside Magazine and a freelance writer for the New York Times Magazine, National Geographic, and numerous other publications. She's also the writer and host of two podcasts, Breast Abound for Audible and The Double X Factor for Outside Magazine. Florence, can you take a few moments to fill in those gaps and maybe also give us a brief glimpse of your personal life?
Oh, sure. I am a science journalist. It's really how I have been kind of painting myself lately. I used to do straight kind of environmental journalism, and then I also did a lot of book reviewing and architecture criticism. But mostly now these days, I am a science journalist, and I live in Washington D.C. with my family. I have two teenagers and a dog and two cats.
Would you also share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Yes, I can. I spent 2 decades living in the Rocky Mountains before I moved to Washington, a few years ago, and I, have always kind of, aspired to being a bigger adventure athlete than I really am, and so I've often found myself, confronting, big physical challenges and sort of wanting to overcome them, whether it's, backcountry skiing off a cliff that's a little steeper than I want it to be, or kayaking a river. And I think with the kayaking, especially something I've been doing since I was a kid. And boy, your fears become very visceral very fast when you're facing a rapid. And it's just something I've struggled with because it's not really natural for me to feel like I have a lot of testosterone, I guess, to sort of go for like the really big shoots and the big water. And so I've had to kind of find a place where I feel both challenged but also comfortable.
I know we were talking a little bit earlier. You've done research and written about fear. So I was hoping maybe you could help us by sharing what you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote about fear for Outside Magazine, and again, I think fear is something that a lot of athletes and kind of aspirational athletes have to deal with, especially in the world of adventure sports. So we wanted to find out, is fear a good thing, or is fear, can it when is it bad? When does it cross the line into being sort of debilitating? And what can aspirational athletes or even really successful athletes do to kind of confront it? And so I interviewed some surfers who do really big wave surfing. I interviewed people who do slacklining, across large chasms without any kind of safety equipment. Uh, rock climbers who do their climbing without safety equipment. And you'd think that these athletes have really conquered their fears and that's why they can do what they do. But in fact, they tell me that they have to deal with their fear all the time, that they do have fear. And I think that they have a different comfort level with that fear. And I think that's kind of the difference between those kinds of athletes and the rest of us. They have kind of made a major um, hobby out of learning how to master that fear and kind of quiet it down.
Is there a particular method that you've discovered that they use that you could share with us today?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. For some of the athletes, it's a lot of mindfulness. Like really being in the moment, learning how to be in the present moment, and not kind of projecting what's going to happen if they fail, which I think is a really normal response and probably a really human response that has actually kept us safe, for many millennia. But they have learned to really try to block out, that kind of future voice. And then the other thing is, what neuroscientists and psychologists just call exposure therapy. So I interviewed Kevin Labar, who sometimes people call him Dr. Fear, and he's a professor at Duke University's Center for Cognitive Neuroscience. So he uses 3D virtual reality technology to kind of instill fear in people by delivering them an electric shock, for example, when they see an image on the screens in front of them. So I actually underwent this experiment with him, and every time a spider came on, even though I'm not normally afraid of spiders, every time a spider came on the screen, I got an electric shock. So pretty soon I learned to fear the image of the spider. That was just a classic association. And then he tried to sort of decondition that fear. And this is something he does with people who really do have phobias, where he would then show me the image of the spider, but without the shock. And eventually then you become deconditioned to it through exposure that is safe. So I think those are both techniques that people commonly use.
Are there additional resources and materials that you've come across that you might also be able to share with us today?
Yeah, I'm one of the let's see, one of the psychologists I interviewed was very positive on the sort of 8-step meditation program, where you really learn how to meditate, because meditation is not something that I think is very intuitive for a lot of people. We have to learn how to do it, and not everyone can learn how to do it. But apparently there is this kind of 8-step program, for example, that the Marine Corps apparently uses, and after the end of that program, people can really learn to be more mindful in the present moment. So I guess meditation courses or classes, could be something that I would recommend, especially for people who have a specific fear or who have a specific phobia, they want to work on, or if they just want to learn how to be more present in their lives.
Are you ready for the speed run?
I'm ready.
What individual, whether they be fictional or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Yeah, that would be my mother for sure. She was a single mom, and she raised me to believe in myself and to be self-sufficient, and I guess not to always take myself so seriously too. So I think those were all tremendous gifts from her.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would you change?
Good question. I think one thing I feel very passionate about right now is I would change the course that we are on of people being increasingly disconnected from the natural world. So if I could change one thing, I would want to work on children spending more time in nature, feeling more comfortable in nature, feeling a love for nature, sort of cultivating their natural sense of biophilia or a love for living things. I am so concerned that kids today don't cultivate that, they don't experience it, and because they think they're separate from the natural world, we're not taking care of it.
What's your biggest weakness?
My biggest weakness is probably that I like to be in control. So maybe my mother didn't fully influence everything about me, because I think she would have told me not to do that so much and not to take myself so seriously. But yeah, I do like to be in control, and of course we can't be, and we have to learn to accept when things don't always go our way. So I'm working on that.
What's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength is that I love my children to pieces, and I'm a great mom. And I think I have instilled in them this love for the outdoor world that I wish all children could have. and that all parents can have. I'm proud of my parenting.
If you could only have one book to read, what book is that going to be?
Well, my favorite book as a teenager was Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. And it's a hard book, it's a challenging book. It's so much about how we need to learn to love each other. And I would love to spend more time reading that book again as an adult to see if its messages were still so resonant. So I think I'd stick with that one.
Do you have a favorite sound?
Yes, The Sound of Rain in a Forest.
And Florence, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, I have a website, florencewilliams.com, and I'm on Twitter at flowwill.com, and I'm on Facebook at florencewilliams/author.
And Florence, what parting advice would you like to leave with us today?
Embrace your fears. Don't fear them. They're part of who you are. And learn to accept yourself in all of your strengths and your weaknesses.
That's excellent advice, and thank you so much. And
Okay. Thanks, Billy.
yeah, and I want to thank you too for coming on the show today and not only sharing your story of your own personal fear, but some of the knowledge that you've learned, and just thanks for passing that on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.